Good evening.
Today, in this special edition of KMT News, we'll be extensively reporting to you the battle between China and Japan while covering the important events, causes, and consequences of the great battle throughout the broadcast. To begin with, Japan was badly hit by the Wall Street crash in the 1930s. They needed more raw materials and resources to keep up with the economy. They began to expand overseas, but they saw hectic China as a resolution for success and prosperity. Japan had their eye on Manchuria, the northern part of China. This was because Manchuria had a crazy amount of resources but had a really sparse population, completely opposite with Japan with their limited resources but increasing population. The large land could be used to build railways for the Japanese, which could be used for trade and transportations of raw materials to Japan. Finally, in 1937, the Japanese had a series of conquests in which, finally, they invaded China. Manchuria, instead of resisting, Manchuria had actually welcomed Japan to its land, as they believed that Japan would be a strong alliance to have. But in other parts of China, there was always a strong hatred towards the foreigners, but all of this hatred was directed at Japan upon their arrival to China. In Shanghai, there was a Japanese boycott, leaving more than 700,000 tons of rejected cargo from Japan. All around China, many of the Chinese wanted Chiang to declare war on Japan, but Chiang believed that national unity should be achieved before fighting the Japanese. They wanted to completely defeat the communists before handling with the Japanese. He had ordered Zhang Xueliang, the northern warlord, to use his northeastern army for an anti-communist attack, but Jiang had refused. In fact, Jiang had secret meetings with Zhou Enlai and other communist leaders in 1936 to negotiate the formation of an alliance between the communists and the nationalists. The different views and opinions around China shown previously and the unwillingness of Chiang Kai-shek to follow the wishes of the majority, which was to fight together against the Japanese, led to the next point, which is the Xian incident, in which Chiang was captured so that he was forced to agree to fight together. Moving on, the Xian incident was a kidnapping of Chiang Kai-shek in order to allow China to unite as one country against Japan. This happened in December 1936 when Chiang met up with Jiang for negotiations, where Chiang had told Chiang that he did not want to fight the communists as he thought the threat from the Japanese was more dangerous. Chiang disagreed, and straight after he was captured and was to be eliminated, but Joseph Stalin, a general of the Soviet Union, did not agree with the CCP's conclusion of eliminating Chiang, believing that Chiang would be needed to win against the Japanese. Therefore, Zhou Enlai, a representative of the CCP, was sent to Xi'an for a negotiation. Zhou, Jiang, and Chiang had made an agreement which included the acceptance of Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles, and they would fight together against Japan. This is linked to the second event, which is the Second United Front, as the Xi'an incident allowed the Second United Front to happen. We'll move on to Jisoo, who will talk about the Second United Front.
In the beginning, the communists only used guerrilla tactics and made sure not to start a major battle against the Japanese, believing that they couldn't win against them. They had taken control of the countrysides that the Japanese had left unoccupied as the Japanese continued conquering more of China's land. Japan was unable to fully control all the areas that they had captured as they did not have enough men to do so. Some areas were left unguarded so they could proceed to capture more land. These areas were often countrysides. Japan instead focused on large cities, important railways, airfields, ports, and roads. From 1937 to 1940, the communist fighters moved eastwards from their base at Yan'an and took control of more northern parts of China. In 1940, the communists started an offense called the Hundred Regiments Battle. They attacked the Japanese railway communication, which was an interference for the Japanese to commute and transport to and fro the northern and southern parts of China.
The Three All campaign was a policy designed as a retaliation against the Chinese for the communist-led Hundred Regiments offensive in December 1940. In 1941, with the motto "Kill all, burn all, and destroy all," an Operation Cut the Three All campaign was started. The aim was to turn the people against the communists. The Japanese burned down villages and crops, slaughtered their animals, poisoned wells, and killed peasants of the areas that they had control over or supported them.
However, this plan had not gone accordingly, leading to an opposite effect to come out as an outcome. The Chinese had started to resent the Japanese even more and were willing to help the communists as much as they could to defeat the Japanese. In 1945, the Japanese had retreated from the south back to Manchuria. The communists were able to take all 18 of the southern parts of China that the Japanese had occupied. These areas were called liberation areas and were mostly rural. The CCP had gained a lot of support over the course of these events. Mao had made sure that the communists would properly blend in and live amongst the peasants and teach them how to spy, hide, and even lay mines. The CCP were not seen as corrupt, unlike the GMD. They had also treated the peasants with respect and kindness. Which concludes the news from the Second United Front to the Three All campaign.
The GMD emerged weaker from the war. They looked very unpatriotic because they were unwilling to fight the Japanese. Chiang took up till 1937 to declare war on Japan, which led to China losing industrial bases. The GMD officials were corrupted and did little to help the people. This lowered the well-being in China and decreased trust from the public towards the GMD. Rents remained high, lack of medical care as well as high inflation added to the loss of support of the GMD. Chiang governed like a military dictator with the name of the Generalissimo, with a private army of blue shirts, led by Tai Li, which hunted down and tortured enemies of the Kuomintang, especially the communists. Chiang did little to improve China's welfare problems.
The CCP, however, emerged stronger from the war. They gained support from the lower-class peasants because land was distributed to them, while the taxes and rent costs were reduced. Women's restrictions were also reduced, foot-binding marriage laws were all abolished, and new and more beneficial rules were implemented, showing that the CCP were more open-minded and actually cared about the different aspects of the Chinese society, and were willing to help everyone.
Big estates were confiscated from rich lands and shared among the peasants. Rents and taxes were reduced and peasants were given interest-free loans. Outdated and undesirable practices were abolished, especially in the lives of women.
Overall, the war was ultimately extremely beneficial for the CCP, as it showed that the CCP were more flexible, open-minded, and more organized than the KMT. The strength that the CCP gained from the war helped China to become a more modernized and unified society, and the weaknesses shown by Chiang proved to be detrimental in the CCP victory during the Chinese Civil War in 1945.
That's all for today's news. Tune in next week for the next articles.